Hello from the Cradle of Liberty, Philadelphia. This is Steve McKnight, and we are broadcasting another episode of the Liberty Brawler Podcast with Steve McKnight. Today we're going to go over why you should be a Libertarian, because it is National Voter Registration Day, and we also have Brian Ellison for a live interview. Now, I don't know if you know this, but today, September 25th, 2018, is National Voter Registration Day. National Voter Registration Day is a national holiday for our republic. It was first observed in 2012 and has been growing in popularity every year since. Now, since it is National Voter Registration Day, I'd like to go into what a libertarian is and what we believe. Libertarians believe that we should challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and defend our rights as individuals. We also believe that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives and have the right to live in whatever manner they choose, so long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal right of others to live in whatever manner they choose. So we call this the non-aggression principle. It is an ethical stance that asserts that aggression is inherently wrong. In this context, aggression is defined as initiating or threatening any forcible interference with an individual or individual's property. Now, we also believe that libertarians have rights that do not come from the government, and they are namely the right to life, the right to liberty of speech and action, and the right to property. If you'd like to learn more about libertarianism in general, please check out lp.org. That is lp.org. They go over our platform, principles, preamble, and also what's going on in the Libertarian Party. Now to the Brian Ellison interview.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We're now live with Brian Ellison. Brian is an Army veteran and construction project manager and is running for U.S. House in Michigan's 8th District. Brian, it's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
So, Brian, I have to ask you, since you've ripped into the Libertarian Party and become pretty popular and well-known, what got you into libertarianism?
Well, I guess I've always had this kind of innate desire for a pursuit of, equal liberty and justice and just kind of a feeling, a desire to want things to be right and a feeling that things just weren't. And so I didn't know what that, how to consider myself or what political ideology that was. For a while, I felt like I was politically homeless. And then it was through kind of following some different YouTube channels and some different activists that I kind of got involved and brought to the party. And it was about a year and a half ago when I read the party platform and I was like, boom, this is me. This describes me to a T and describes, what I want, out of a political system and I guess I would say a lack of government. So, yeah, that's, it kind of took me a long time to get to this point, but, I feel like I finally found a home.
Now, what would you consider your political philosophy? Are you a classical liberal? Are you an anarchist? What do you believe your political philosophy is?
Fundamentally and principally, I'm an anarchist. However, I understand that the pragmatic side of things and the fact that as of right now, I don't think we're at a point where society would be ready for anarchy. I think it's the ideal arrangement. I think it's certainly the most peaceful arrangement, but I think there's still a process of evolution before we could get to a point where it would be, an appropriate way to structure society.
So you think of the more practical and pragmatic approach to getting freer from government?
Well, I don't believe in that approach. I just see that as kind of the practical steps. Like, if it was up to me, I'd snap my fingers and government would be gone. I just don't see that as being realistic, and I certainly don't see that as being beneficial to a significant portion of the population.
Okay, no, that makes perfect sense. Thank you, Brian. Now, if elected, what do you guarantee for your voters?
I guarantee that that every vote that I make will be to reduce or restrict government, and that I will never, I would never certainly vote to increase any spending or certainly not any taxes. And I think the voters could count on me to be the closest thing that they would have to their own voice being in an elected position.
Great, great. Now, I wanted to ask you, since partisan politics is playing such a big role in politics, if elected, how are you going to approach partisan politics? Are you going to be partisan like what's going on now, bipartisan, or even tripartisan?
Well, I think that with our party being a libertarian, obviously we don't have a significant presence, and certainly we have no presence in the federal government. So it would be hard to consider that I would go in with the intention of being partisan. So I think that gives me an advantage as a representative where I couldn't even really fall into that trap. It just wouldn't even be possible. But the concept of libertarianism and individual rights, I think that translates to not having a desire to be partisan, that each issue would be approached on the merits of the issue and how it relates to individual liberty and the pursuit of that.
Now, Brian, if someone who wanted to support you or is a fan wanted to contact you, what's the best way to contact you, and what are the do's and do nots of contacting Brian Ellison?
The best way right now to contact me would be through my website. That is Ellison, that's ELLISON, the number 4, Congress.com, and you can there's some contact forms on there. That's probably the best way to reach out to me. That filters through the campaign. I'm also on Facebook, sometimes through Facebook Messenger. If you send me a friend request, I generally try and keep up with those as much as I can every couple days. And I don't think there is any do nots. I think that anybody who wants to contact me, I certainly appreciate the hate mail every once in a while that I get. And so, there's really no do nots. If I don't like what you have to say, I'll tell you as much, and I won't communicate any further.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you, according to the Michigan Libertarian Party website, you've had 2 arrests for protesting, and after reviewing it and doing my own research, I think these are bullshit charges that have been brought against you. Can you go into detail about what happened?
Yeah, first of all, just on the surface, I think you're absolutely right. They are bullshit charges. I think that the prosecutor certainly knows that they're bullshit charges, but the police are really pushing them. And just if I back up one step before I get into the details, the police chief within the city of Royal Oak, where I've been arrested twice, is actually also the assistant city manager, which means that this city has they're in a unique position where the chief of police has leverage over the prosecuting attorney. And so even though the prosecutor knows that the charges are bullshit, he still is being pushed to prosecute him because the chief of police functions as his boss in a way. So it's really an interesting dynamic. But basically what happened is back in the spring, in April and May, there was two extrajudicial killings by police officers in the city of Royal Oak.
Right.
And the first one kind of was a blip on the radar, and it's kind of embarrassing, but it was like, okay, it happens. It's an anomaly. I didn't really pay it that much attention. And then it was when the second one happened that red flags and fireworks started going off, and I was like, okay, something's going on here. I got to look at this. And so I started looking into the details, and there was very little details that were available, and I started requesting details, and I was getting completely stonewalled by the city. And so I started becoming vocal about it, and it was when I started getting vocal that I started getting a lot of pushback from the city. And we organized a protest at a police fundraiser event. It was a 5K run, and there was an attitude from the beginning of the police officers that they were targeting me and that they were going to arrest me. I just uploaded a video recently to YouTube that shows the audio from one of the police officers, but they were targeting me specifically. There was about 15 protesters at the event, and their goal was just to get me out of there, get me out of the event. And so that played out interesting. I kind of was half expecting that I would be arrested that day, but I was expecting that I would have to push the envelope and that I would have to engage in some type of civil disobedience in order to make that happen. And even then I was like, well, maybe they won't, because I didn't plan on breaking any laws, just kind of pushing the envelope. And they didn't even let me get to that point. They essentially forced me into a position of, cornering me, and they corralled me into the street. And so I felt like I had no choice but to get on my bullhorn and be like, and bring attention to what they were doing. And when I did, that's when they decided to arrest me. And so that was the first arrest. I did resist that arrest because really they caught me off guard, and there's kind of this whole philosophy of not wanting to participate in your own kidnapping. But
sure, yeah.
So that was the first arrest, and that was back in June, and then I've been going through the court process for that ever since, and it's still pending. And then in August, on the 23rd of August, there was another police event where it was a groundbreaking for a new police station, and I advertised that I was going to be there, that it was going to be an open carry event, an open house style event. We were going to walk around with signs and try and engage people in conversations. And as soon as I arrived there, the police confronted me, and they said, you can't protest here, which, obviously we know that's not the case. We can protest. They said they gave me an area to protest in. And, I could go on and on about all the details, but essentially I didn't obey their rules, their quote rules. And I held a sign outside of the area that was taped off for protest. Literally all I did was hold a sign, and they arrested me for disorderly conduct. And so, that charge has since been dropped, and it's been replaced with a charge of attempted obstructing government operations and, impeding a police officer or some other bullshit charge, whatever it is. So yeah, I still have all those cases pending. Back about 2 weeks ago, it changed from 3 misdemeanor counts to 6 misdemeanor counts. They refiled basically. They dropped all the initial charges.
For that, or did they just say that they were working on it?
There was no reason. So we had a hearing scheduled on September 13th for a motion to dismiss in the first case. And 2 days prior to that hearing, that's when they refiled the charges. And so they had obviously seen our motion, knew what our defense was. And, in my opinion, in my attorney's opinion, they were basically, they knew that they weren't going to beat the, that the motion was going to be in our favor. And so they kind of made it void by changing the charges. And so we couldn't argue a motion that didn't apply to the charges. And so that essentially got postponed.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I think that the goal is just they want to drag this out as long as possible, because right now they have this ridiculous bond condition on me that prohibits me from being within 50 feet of any uniformed law enforcement officer.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. That's actually a restraining order.
I mean, technically it's not a restraining order because I don't think there's a judge out there. I mean, there's no threat of violence or violence involved, and so there would never be a restraining order like that granted. This is simply a bond condition. So since I'm out on bond
condition, okay.
Exactly. So because it's a condition of bond, they're able to have these broad orders because it's not subject to the same scrutiny that a restraining order would be. So, we argued it, and I was kind of shocked that the judge went along with it, but he did. So here we are.
Yeah, no, it's amazing what happens when you actually try to be a libertarian and try to be competitive with the state. They will come up with stuff and make it up if they have to, because I don't know how you got arrested. I've seen the video, and I don't understand why they arrested you. And more importantly, now you're telling me that they've added on more charges, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's because there's no check, and so I've been trying to escalate things as far as criminal charges against the police department, because they continue to engage in these conspiracies. I mean, again, I have it on recording of them talking about arresting me before I committed any offense and before I suggested that I would, which I never have suggested I would. And they've also engaged in conspiracy to steal my pistol and all these other things. And every time I try and escalate it to a next higher authority, I'm told there is no next higher authority. Like wow. the municipal government can essentially do whatever they want to do unchecked unless somebody within that governmental body objects to it. So it's really an interesting situation.
Now, Brian, I understand, is there a GoFundMe account for legal costs?
There is. I have a friend of mine set it up, and it's just entitled Brian Ellison Arrest Fund on GoFundMe, and that is, that's certainly helping out. I also have some, do some T-shirt sales through Teesprings, and hopefully that'll help. And but essentially, yeah, these arrests and the disputes that I've been having with the city actually contributed to was actually I can't even say contributed, but it caused me to be fired from my job. And so they fired me from my job the day before I was arrested the second time. So it's been really like you said, when the government wants to go after you, when you try and do libertarian things, they go after you full force. So
right.
it's
sorry to hear that, Brian. Sorry.
No, it's not entirely unexpected. Right, we know that the state likes to go after people who they see as a threat to the establishment, and so they've come at me with both barrels.
Now, how can you donate to the campaign?
On our website, again, ellisonforcongress.com, there's a donate button, and it's done through PayPal. You know, we accept credit cards and everything, but yeah, you can donate right there on the campaign page. And we're actually running right now a special promotional fundraiser where we are offering services to police departments to provide strippers before their shift to help them relieve some of their stress so that they don't have to go out and abuse people. So it's kind of a novel idea. I don't know that anybody's tried it before, but donations between now and the end of the month, we're gonna use a portion of those to facilitate that cause.
Now, Brian, we're getting close to the 15-minute mark, and something I like to ask everybody who comes on. What would you like to get your chest off about things that you've learned through your experience with the Libertarian Party? And more importantly, what would you say are the do's and do nots for a new and prospective Libertarian coming in?
Well, I think that what I would say is that if you feel get as involved as you want to get involved. Don't feel pressured to get involved. Don't take on more than you're ready to take on. But if you feel like you're ready to take it on, take it on. So if you're pressured to run for office, but you don't feel like you're ready, don't do it. But if you feel like you can, then you should do it. I think the biggest do and do not that I would advocate is don't engage in infighting with other party members. I think that is such a waste of time.
That's an excellent point. Yes.
It's such a waste of time, and it's a waste of resources. We have a limited number of resources and a limited amount of time that we can engage with the public in seeking a free world, a world set free. And the more time we spend arguing philosophy with each other, the less time we spend in outreach.
That's excellent. Brian, thank you for coming on today. The Liberty Brawler staff really appreciates it.
Thanks again for having me, Steve. I really appreciate you inviting me.
Now, here are the talking points I've taken away from interviewing Brian Ellison today. 1, Brian believes in libertarianism, and he also believes that libertarianism is liberty and freedom for all. 2, if elected, Brian will limit government and not agree to increased taxation. And finally, 3, if elected, Brian will stay above partisan politics. Well, that's all the time we have today. This is Steve McKnight signing off from another episode of the Liberty Brawler Podcast with Steve McKnight. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. And remember, today is National Voter Registration Day. If you're listening and you're not libertarian, it's never too late to try something new.